Hey guys, welcome to Criminally Focused. My name is Desiree, and whether you're new to my channel or you're a returning viewer, I am incredibly happy that you found me. So, today is part 2 in a series of videos where we discuss a deadly house fire that took the lives of 4 innocent girls. The girls' names were Kyone, Cariel, Kiara, and Kiana, and I think it's really important that we don't forget these faces while we discuss the aftermath of this tragedy. But this wasn't just a tragic accident, or we wouldn't be talking about it probably, right? Nope, this was an arson investigation, meaning that somebody deliberately, intentionally set this fire. So, for the sake of time, I'm not really going to recap much of what we went over in part 1, but briefly, in part 1, we go over the timeline of the fire and details of the arson investigation that followed. If you haven't seen part 1, I highly recommend watching it before watching part 2, otherwise this video probably won't make sense. But I've linked it in the description below for you to check it out. So, in part 2, we are going to discuss the Flora reward fund money that many believe is significantly less than what it should be, as well as the lawsuits that followed the fire. Both left me with more questions than answers, but all of this information will lead us into part 3, where we discuss the theories and suspects in this investigation. Anyways, let's jump in to part 2. And if you want to follow along, just a heads up, there's a lot of information, so grab a notebook and a pen and join me and many others in fighting for justice for this family. So after the fire took place on November 21st, 2016, the Flora community gathered together and created a committee called the Flora 4 Angels. This committee would help to raise money that would go towards the arrest of a suspect in this case. Now, this committee was overseen by a parent company, which was the Flora Community Club. And a parent company is basically just a group that oversees a committee, helps to finance it, and in the end is the end-all be-all of the decision making. Under an agreement with the Flora Community Club, this committee would gather money. However, the donations would be held separately than the state's $5,000 reward fund that was already being offered. If the case wasn't solved within 5 years, the money donated would instead go to the Flora Volunteer Fire Department. By doing this, they would ensure that the money basically wouldn't just sit there and not be used. So after the 5-year mark, they wanted it donated to the fire department so they could use that money for fire safety education, etc. throughout the community. The Flora 4 Angels Committee would raise thousands of dollars through car shows and different fundraisers, even one where they created a cookbook featuring some of the girls' favorite recipes. The community really showed up to support Galen and her family. Many members of the community, people who donated money to this cause, felt like the money was stolen and truly should have been given to the $5,000 reward fund that had already been offered.
Flora Arson Reward Fund will soon be donated to the town's volunteer fire department. As News 18's Joe Paul reports, some members of the volunteer fundraising group want to see the money go elsewhere.
The victims were Kiani, Cariel, Kiara, and Kiana. When Kathy Clendenning helped to start a reward fund in 2017, she never imagined the person responsible would remain on the loose nearly 6 years later. The Flora 4 Angels Committee has raised about $18,000 since then for information leading to an arrest. Clendenning is now pleading with fire officials to donate that money to a separate reward fund.
There's still someone out there. There's still someone that I know could turn in a tip. I am begging you to turn the funds over to the state fund, and please continue this reward for the girls.
In a statement, a lawyer representing the Flora Community Club said the organization is legally obligated to distribute the funds as promised.
And unfortunately, this wasn't the only bump in the road that the Flora Reward Fund money would face.
The death of 4 beautiful girls in a house fire in Flora struck a nerve across Indiana and the country. Neighbors and strangers with a common goal: to help the family.
It shows that there are a lot of people from across the country that have good hearts, that want to see justice for these girls.
Misty of Flora is well aware of the Facebook group called Flora's Fantastic Four. It was set up to raise money to encourage people to increase tips involving the fatal fire in Carroll County. Misty sent Brian Muhe, who's leading the collection, a check for $50 last month. For her contribution, she received this thank you message from Brian. The money has yet to make it to the reward fund.
I personally was crushed that Brian did this. I trusted him. Other people trusted him. We had faith in him. And we were shocked and devastated to find out that that money never went to where it was supposed to go.
May 23rd, Brian posted the group had raised $300 for the fund. We checked with the Indiana Department of Homeland Security, which manages the reward fund. The agency has not seen a penny from this Facebook collection.
Brian would go on to explain that due to a falling out that he had with group members, they decided to shut down the Facebook group and that the money would need to be returned to the people who donated it. However, many people said they never received their money. Brian explained that this was probably due to the fact that many people blocked him on Facebook and he was unable to communicate with them. But I don't know. I'm not sure if this money ended up all being returned. I couldn't find that, but it sounds kind of shady. Okay, so now that we went over the reward fund money, let's get into the lawsuits that followed the fire. And guys, I went into such a rabbit hole investigating these lawsuits. Like, I'm serious. I would be researching one thing and then find something else. And all of a sudden, hours later, I would be nose deep in court documents, researching something completely different. So, this is when you're going to want your pen and your piece of paper. Get ready to start taking notes because this is crazy.
I wish I had time to get into all of the details that I found within these court documents. However, be sure to check out my Flora Fire playlist, as well as the Flora 4 Reddit community created by YouTuber Meowzedong.
Carroll County, 911, what is the address of your emergency?
May of 2017, a reporter working for Fox 59 requested there were 911 recordings from the November 2016 fire. In June, after not receiving the recordings, Fox 59 filed a complaint with the Office of Public Access. After the county still refused to release the 911 recordings, in February of 2018, Fox 59 filed a lawsuit against Carroll County, arguing that the public had the legal right to access the recordings under the Access to Public Records Act. The prosecutor at the time, Robert Ives, and the Indiana State Police claimed that the recordings were part of the investigation and therefore needed to be sealed from the public. However, if you jump forward to October 2019, Fox 59 would win the lawsuit against Carroll County. They offered to settle the lawsuit if Carroll County would pay a portion of their legal costs, $30,000, and release the recordings. After the Carroll County Commissioners held private meetings discussing how they should handle the judgment against them, they declined Fox 59's settlement and proceeded to take the case to the Indiana Supreme Court. And finally, in April 2020, the Indiana Court of Appeals ruled in favor with Carroll County against releasing the 911 calls. Under the Access to Public Records Act, a person has the right to access information regarding the government and official acts of public officials and employees. This covers all public records of a city or county, including things like maps, photographs, reports, and recordings. The only exception to this law are records that are federally protected, such as patient medical history and records that are deemed non-disclosable by a judge.
The law states that if a record contains both disclosable information and non-disclosable, then the government needs to redact the information that they don't want the public to see and release the rest. According to different court records that I have gone through, there were 2 phone calls. One was from the upstairs neighbors and the other was from a neighbor across the street. I mean, surely both of the phone calls didn't need to be entirely redacted and withheld from the public, right? What was in those 911 calls that Carroll County spent over $30,000 to withhold from the public?
This is a transcript that was listed in the court documents. I suggest pausing it here to read, but nothing here looks suspicious to me. Definitely not worth $30,000 to hide.
So I don't know if 30,000 is chump change to Carroll County, but when you take into consideration that as of April 2021, the Flora Backup 911 call center didn't have working phone lines or internet lines, you kind of start to wonder where Carroll County Commissioner's priorities are. According to the Carroll Comet, a backup 911 call center would cost approximately $22,784 a year to sustain. So whatever's in those 911 calls is worth a year of a backup 911 call center.
Guess I better hope the 911 dispatch center never goes down. Or what are people expected to do? Just mail in their 911 requests?
Okay, so the last thing we're going to cover in this video is a lawsuit between Galen Rose and her landlords, as well as Sears and Whirlpool. In the lawsuit, Galen alleges that her landlords, Birch Tree Holdings, or Josh Ayers and Troy Helderman, were responsible for the girl's death. She claimed that under the Indiana state law, the landlords failed to provide a safe and habitable living place for her and her daughters.
Tonight at 5:30 with new developments in a high-profile arson case. The mother of 4 girls who died in Flora 2 years ago has now filed a wrongful death lawsuit in the case against her former landlord and an appliance manufacturer.
Galen Rose calls an outgoing city councilman and his business partner negligent landlords. Our 13 Investigates reporter Sandra Chapman talked with the family and learned who the mother believes is to blame.
Family members say for far too long, Galen Rose, the mother of Kiana, Kiera, Carrielle, and Kiani, has been the focus.
She lived for those girls, and no way in this world would she do anything to hurt them.
Now the mother herself, who was questioned about the fire, says her landlord's negligence is to blame for the death of her girls. In a federal lawsuit filed in the Northern District of Indiana, Galen Rose and her attorney say Councilman Joshua Ayers, his business partner Troy Helderman, and their company Birch Tree Holdings violated Indiana law and failed to provide a safe and habitable property. The lawsuit says as a result of the failure to equip the property with any functioning smoke detectors, Rose's 4 minor children died from smoke inhalation.
Those smoke detectors would have gotten them up. They would have took off, because I know them. They would have come flying down the stairs because it's a noise.
Rose also claims she reported malfunctioning electrical outlets in the kitchen and problems with the Whirlpool range more than 2 weeks before the fire. According to the lawsuit, Ayers and/or Helderman acted with gross negligence. The landlords reportedly attempted to repair the outlets and a leaking kitchen ceiling, but were unsuccessful. In addition, there's a product liability claim against Whirlpool, the manufacturer of a Sears Kenmore range taken from the home's kitchen. Rose and her attorney say the range was defective and dangerous, and the deaths of her girls would not have occurred without Whirlpool and/or Sears. Jacqueline Partlow says her nieces deserve answers.
And unfortunately for Galen and her babies, those answers have not been found.
Investigates has a surprising new development tonight in that Flora fire investigation. You remember that big fire that killed 4 Indiana sisters?
Well, the mother of the girls dismissed her federal product liability lawsuits against Sears and the Whirlpool Corporation. But Galen Rose and her attorneys filed a federal lawsuit claiming that the stove in her apartment was partly to blame for that fire that killed her 4 daughters.
This stove was manufactured by Whirlpool and sold by Sears. And now Rose's attorney tells 13 Investigates extensive testing revealed that stove was not defective.
Now, with the appliance ruled out, Rose will continue to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit against her former landlords for failing to install working smoke detectors.
So, as this is still an ongoing investigation, if you have any tips that might be important to solving this case, the phone number is listed below where you can contact the Indiana State Police. In part 3, we will go over kind of the theories of the case, as well as ways that you can help and ways that you can keep your own family safe. Until next time, stay safe, and thanks for watching.
Person that might know something, first of all, look at the news and look at these 4 babies and do the right thing. Just do the right thing. Your life will be better by just doing the right thing. If you know the truth, tell it.
As always, I mean no disrespect to anyone mentioned in this video.